I'm Matt Carey, documentary editor at Deadline, and this is the Deadline studio at the Toronto International Film Festival. We are joined by the protagonist, the star, if I may put it this way, of The Last Republican, and the director of the film, Steve Pink. Thanks for being with us.
It's great to be with you. Thanks.
Thanks for having us.
So you guys are an odd couple, if there was ever an odd couple. Steve, you were proudly progressive, and you were proudly conservative. Former representative Kinzinger. How did you guys hook up? It had something to do with a hot tub and a time machine.
Yeah. Well, this isn't the first time I've been called as a filmmaker to tackle, complex, important issues facing America, right? So it's just a continuation of my oeuvre. Absolutely did not want to make this film. I did not want to feature a conservative being a progressive, but I had no choice, actually, because Adam did something really courageous, something, I admired at a time when our country's in crisis. And I had to kind of mirror those things in my head, right? I had to be like, I had to get past my own politics so that I could, dive in and tell that story.
And for me, by the way, it was just at my squadron, we always quote Hot Tub Time Machine. And when I found out that he directed and wrote Hot Tub Time Machine, I was like, all right, we'll do this.
And when you say squadron, for those who don't know, 22 years in the Air National Guard. Mm-hmm. You're a pilot. We see you flying around the country. And I guess you were flying from Washington back to Illinois. And that's impressive in and of itself, but far more impressive is the response that you took after the January 6th insurrection. You were, of course, as we know, one of the very few Republicans who condemned President Trump and stuck to it. Mm-hmm. We see in the film Kevin McCarthy and Mitch McConnell, of course, were like, they're castigating him, and then things changed. You said you didn't want to do the film. You didn't want to be on the January 6th investigative committee, which surprised me.
I knew what it would lead to. When you turn against your party, it's one thing to vote against the president and vote for impeachment or vote for the creation of the committee. But by getting on the committee, I knew, I'm not just making a decision to be on the committee. I am making the decision to end my political career. Am I ready for that? At the time, I was looking, maybe I'll run for Senate, maybe I'll run for governor. But I also knew that I couldn't say no if I was asked. How can, you're given this moment in time. I'm lucky. I represented 700,000 people. What are the chances? 1 in 700,000. And now I'm at this moment in history, and you're asked to do this job. To say no, I could never look at my kid, who's 2.5 now, and tell him what it means to do the right thing if I was unwilling to do it.
I think one of the remarkable things there is Adam's moral compass. Now, you say that you don't want to be considered a hero, but I think, well, Steve, you can do the talking on that, but this is a man with a rather remarkable moral compass, and we don't see a lot of that, perhaps, in politics.
For someone to give up so much and to endure a lot of what you went through in your last year of Congress on principle, right, on an idea that what is most important is that we preserve what is most important to us in our democracy, putting politics aside, and you lost your friends, your family members came after you. You certainly became a pariah in the Republican Party. That it takes a lot. To
we
do
hear
that.
These horrible death threats. That you got.
It was
and
horrible.
You had to have security around the clock at your house. Yeah. And your wife is pregnant at the time of so much of this you're going through.
And that's the thing is the death threats weren't just against me. I can take that. They were against my wife, ultimately when my kid was born, against him. And what I see is okay, this is a brain rot. This is not what we think of when we think of good humans, right? Something is going on here. They're obviously being programmed or being angered. And that's why it's so important to do the right thing and hope that history judges correctly, because that means we ultimately would have won.
You talk about in the film that you really, in retrospect, think that there was a window of opportunity there. Things could have gone differently. I think one of the windows of opportunity was the Senate could have voted to convict Donald Trump, and that would be end of story. Ineligible, if I'm understanding my history correct. He wouldn't have been able to run again. But you saw another opportunity, short of that, in the absence of conviction in the Senate, on the second impeachment charges, that unfortunately, it wasn't seized. And explain that, if you would.
So there was a period of about 3 weeks from January 6th to when Kevin McCarthy went to Mar-a-Lago. When he went to Mar-a-Lago and met with Donald Trump, that basically set into motion Trump is still in charge of the Republican Party. But for that 3 weeks intervening, it was basically dead silence. I mean, we would meet in these big meetings with all these Republican congressmen, and all of them were just quiet. We didn't know, is Donald Trump going to be around? Is he not? What's the future of this? And they were waiting for leadership to come in and say, hey, guys, we're moving past Trump. Here's going to be the future. Nobody did that, especially Kevin McCarthy, who was in the position to do that. But the 10 of us that voted for impeachment, so the other 9 impeachers, I was trying to get
In
all
the
of
Republican
us
Party.
in the Republican Party, yeah.
Specify that.
That's right. I was trying to get all of us to basically, in essence, lead our own coup in the Republican Party to declare we're in charge of this now. And I could go into all the details of how, but I think we could have succeeded. But the other 9 impeachers, I mean, God bless them for voting to impeach, but the other 9 thought it was time to try to unify the Republican Party. And in that silence, they basically stayed silent. And when Kevin McCarthy went to Mar-a-Lago, there was no countervailing force against him. And I think we missed a historic opportunity that to this day haunts me. And I'm glad that the film shows that, because that to me is the one thing, the one regret I have is not pushing harder.
Well, that's probably a question for either of you. But Kamala Harris, should she be elected, has promised to put a Republican in the cabinet. Maybe Steve, would you like to see this man in the Kamala Harris cabinet if she's elected? You're
mean,
laughing. But
Yeah, I would, because
so
I
I'm
would.
laughing because I'm looking at his head and he's not a...
No, I'm down. No, of course I would, because he will realize the wisdom of our party. He would realize that us progressives and Democrats had it, right all along. I hate saying this in front of you, but Adam's a great human being, and you want leaders who are great human beings. And I was in Congress a lot, and you could tell that there were some pretty, from my perspective, some pretty weird people of both stripes. I'm like,
and
wow.
you work in Hollywood.
Yeah, and I work in Hollywood, and I was
Come
like,
on.
man, there are some seriously weird lawmakers stalking these hallways, And so I think finding leaders who you can trust, and even if you disagree with them politically, which clearly we do. Adam would have a lot of opposing views, even obviously with a Harris administration, but he can be, a voice in the room that speaks to millions and millions of people, right, who hold his views, and I think that's important. I think that's important for better government. And then I could text him too. I'm like, hey, are you in the cabinet right now?
Delete your number.
Are you in the cabinet? Like literally? Tell Kamala I said hi. Like what?
Would you serve?
Certainly, yeah. I mean, there's no greater honor than serving an administration. And obviously, I've supported Kamala. I'm endorsing her.
You spoke at the DNC,
I spoke
of
at
course.
the DNC. And to me, one of the things that's interesting is when I had the job of congressman, obviously you have to vote on these issues. And so you have partisan viewpoints and stuff because you have to. Like now, my only thing that I'm concerned about is the preservation of democracy. Honestly, I don't care what the tax rates are. I don't care what other policies are. To me, it's the preservation of democracy and good governance. That's what I care about. And that's why, with Steve, yes, we disagreed on some things, but I actually am glad that he is a left-leaning progressive because we had more fun that way. I was able to rip on him. He could rip on me. If we believed the same thing, it actually would have been no fun, to be honest with you.
Yeah. And I got better at it. I had never been around, I think we become so divided and so polarized. Mm-hmm. What should be a very basic social skill, I think, I don't know if we've lost it as Americans, but it's certainly one that I would put out there is something we should all acquire. Every American should now get really, really good at being agreeably disagreeable. Go and find the person whose views you oppose and go and talk with those people and give them grace and respect and find their humanity and see where there's common ground. There was a moment where I was like, I was following through a parking lot, just filming, and I was like, I'm an important, political documentary filmmaker now. And he said, hey, by the way, I really loved Hot Tub Time Machine. And that was the first time I had heard that, right? I didn't quite know that he was a fan, and I was like, wait, did he just say he was a fan of my movies? And from there we had a real common ground, right? So like a shared sense of humor became a great common ground for us, and I think it's a great common ground in
And
general.
I'm funnier than you, so like that basically says like I should actually direct Hot Tub Time Machine 3.
Yeah, I'm
because
gonna
of my sense of humor.
I'm gonna put you up for that.
Perfect.
If you hopped into a hot tub time machine to the future
Yeah.
in early November, who is going to be the next president of the United States?
I mean, it's literally a coin toss. I think, if you'd asked me 2 months ago, unfortunately, I would have said 90% chance it's Donald Trump. I think it's a coin toss. I would, if I had to bet all my money on one side, agnostically, I would say it's going to be Kamala. And I think that would obviously be great for the country. I think it would be great to destroy the cancer that exists in the Republican Party. But I think we need to be careful. It takes, a Democrat has to win the popular vote by 3 or 4% to win the Electoral College. It's a structural disadvantage.
It's a remarkable documentary. Your story is extraordinary. We didn't even touch on the fact that this story I did not know about of a young woman whose life you saved. I mean, I feel emotional. I seriously feel emotional thinking about it, what you've done for the country, what you've done for serving our country in the military, and on behalf of this woman who's alive today because of you. So thank you. It's an honor to be with you both. The film is The Last Republican. To my left, it apparently is the last Republican. He is right here, former Representative Adam Kinzinger and the director Steve Pink. Thank you so much.
That's great.
Thanks for
Thank
having
you.
us.
Yep.
Yeah.